Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Back to the 80s. This panel is about service and technology clinics. I'd like to introduce the distinguished panel. They are Cindy Reynolds, Dan Stockel from Capital Data, Sean Butler, back from the 80s, Sean Kingery, Marco Zwanenberg, one of the founding members of the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Welcome, Marco, and Coralie Zoof. Everybody, welcome back to the 80s. So appreciate you all being here. We had a great conversation back in January at the Wild West about service and technology clinics. And Marco, I appreciate you getting everybody together and, putting the panel questions together. And I kind of want to lead off with you.
Okay.
And by the way, congratulations to you, Marco. I see you everywhere. I've learned not to bring pizza, okay, to any meetings, but
That's right.
your stuff is all over. So great job with all that.
It's funny how certain things just catch on and keep going.
Yeah, well, the Rapid Recon article that quotes you extensively was very well done, I thought, and really highlights a lot of the needs. So
I had a good time with that, and I really was appreciative of having the input from a vendor to actually that they wanted to talk to the people that have to deal with it. So it was fantastic.
yeah, well, you're frontline, boots on the ground. So Marco, I'll start with you. How long should a service and technology clinic last?
I would say, depending on the audience, but I would keep it small. I would say no longer than 5 hours. They're laughing about that. Okay, they're laughing about that. Think about it, guys. How many people are you going to have to come through? How many people are visiting different parts of the dealership? And what exactly are we doing? What is the setup of this? You don't want to keep it too short. You don't want to make it too long because then stuff drags on. Too short, people are still like, yeah, but wait a minute. You want to be able to dedicate proper time to each and every attendee.
Mhm.
Argue me on that one if you will. So let's go.
All right, Sean Kingery, 5 hours up in Madison, Wisconsin. Marco, I'm not sure we got 5 hours of nice warm weather this summer up there. So go ahead.
Oh, everybody's a comedian, I swear. Listen, I listen. You're talking to a guy who's got ADD. You tell me 5 hours, and I'm out. But and Marco's got a good point. You have to make sure you give everybody quality time, and that leads into the amount of people you have there. And I do think you have to feel the audience too. You got to know in the engagement. Unfortunately, the days that setting airbags off are over. You can't do that stuff anymore. The EPA frowns on that. But that was always, listen, that was a collective thing. Everybody knew you were going to do it, and everybody wanted to wait for that moment. So you always waited till last minute. But to Marco's point, you have to feel the audience out for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Cindy Reynolds, you were with us on the last panel. Your thoughts? How long for a clinic?
I think for a good use of someone's time to make the time to come to your dealership, I would make it at least an hour and a half. And if that isn't long enough in the future, I would make the adjustment to maybe a couple of hours and just make it feel like it's free flowing. So if someone gets what they need within an hour, they feel the freedom to move on. Or if people need more attention, then there's a little bit more time to do that. And, I think it's really important to have a focus of what that clinic is about and then to understand better how much time it will take to do that.
Yeah. And Cindy, with a lack of all these in-person activities the last couple of years, there might be some I'm thinking there's a lot of pent-up demand probably, right, for this type of thing.
I would totally agree with you about that. And I also think with EVs becoming even more, a topic and of conversation with people about whether they want to purchase one or they've just purchased one, with it becoming even newer within dealerships, that really needs to be a big focus for service and technology clinics and for owners or potential owners. And so I do think that nowadays the clinic and technology clinics can be a little bit longer than they probably have been in the past, and even with technology as advanced as it's become on vehicles.
I like it. Dan Stockel, we've talked about the lack of that sales to service handoff. A lot of dealerships talk about it, but don't do it. Your thoughts about how long a service and technology clinic should last?
I was I was thinking about that, Ted, and so I hear 5 hours, hour and a half, an hour. It really just comes down to stations, and to me, I think that anything between an hour and a half and 2 hours, but by stations, and what do you want to get out of it, and you got one piece that's introducing like how do we do a appointment. Then you have another station that's okay. Here's what we do with the technology. Here's how your key fobs work, or another station just to give them the intricacies of their particular vehicle, and it can depend if it's a truck or an SUV or a sedan. And I think that if you had stations and you're going through that kind of setup, that you could get, depending on the number of people, you could probably get 100 people or 50 people, depends, through in a couple of hours, just using that type of scenario. So that's what I liked. I've been involved in that in the past, and for me, I brought it up. So that's what I like is that type. So right around 2 hours. Anything more than that, it's too long because you're not at a movie.
Marco, I know we have this coming up in one of the later questions, but Dan mentioned the stations. Would you market the names of the stations to the potential attendees ahead of time so they know what they're in store for?
I would definitely use that as a part of the program so people know what to expect, because that's another thing. A lot of people don't know what to expect at a service clinic. It's a bit of a vague subject, but I would definitely bring out a bit of a program. And when I said 5 hours, I don't mean have the people there for 5 hours, but for the dealership to be open and available in a 5 hour window where people just can flow through and visit the stations that we're talking about and we'll be talking about.
Okay. All right. So Marco, maybe like we stagger that, right? To make sure that there's not a big line at those stations, right?
It's really no different than your service appointments throughout the day. You don't want everybody showing up between 9 and 10, and then the rest of the day there's no one there. Make the appointments. Once again, now we have allowed time for these people to come in, and we can actually have an interaction with them, build a rapport, and show these people the hows and the whats. If we just have everyone coming in like, boom, okay, here it is, then everybody's panicking. Set it up is just like regular service appointments. Make appointments, bring out the program. We all have websites. All dealerships have websites. So put it on there. Make it interesting. Make it pop.
Sean Kingery, leave it to the technician, right? He always comes up with great stuff. He's thought it out.
He does. Listen, everybody loves Marco. What would Marco do? It's a saying.
Right.
Yep. I could see that now. Coralie, you wrote the book 5-Star Service Advisor. What do you think? How long for a service clinic?
I was thinking about 3 hours would be a good time frame. With what we've been doing in my local area here right now is dealerships are hosting car clubs. So some members are familiar with the dealership and some have just moved to town and are not, and just want the association of people who are brand enthusiasts, and they all get to come and meet everyone from each department. Some people are, interested in some parts, some want to see how the shop operates, some want to see the latest models that are coming in from the sales department as well. And so everyone gets time to, grab a cup of coffee and chat with each other and sort of form little groups about, who wants to go learn more about what, which, is where the stations come into place. So see a good social morning, afternoonish, I'd say up to 3 hours is a good time.
Okay. Sean Butler, I've been saving you for last. You got a chance to hear everybody's input. What do you think, Sean? How long should a service technology clinic last?
So I've done a few of these, and I never really put a time limit on it. We started and then we set up the stations, and then I was always manning the grill, right? Hamburgers, hot dogs, all American, fare. But we, technology stations, service stations, people explaining. And today, now we haven't really done any since COVID. I'm gonna be honest with you. So it's been like 3 years. And people just got out of the habit of it. It's same thing with the sales to service handoff. I mean, there's some people do a good job. I admit we don't, right? And have it for the last few years. But I do recall the stations, the food, the balloons for the kids, the open shop, everything was sparkling clean. It really made a big impact. So you'll look forward to getting back to doing something like that. But I definitely believe in the stations and having them properly manned. Everything's so you got all these links today, right? Your car talks to the dealership and it sends out, SOS signals when bells and whistles go off. You probably would need to have that staffed with sales and service people, as well as technicians, to properly explain that. A lot of people buy these things and never use the stuff because they don't understand it.
Sean Butler, how often would you do such a clinic? How How often would that happen?
We want to train the customers to come in every 6 months, right? Even though if you listen to the car technology, like, Honda, Toyota does it every 6 months, no matter what. Come in. Honda wants you to wait for the maintenance binder, which is, to me, ridiculous, because it could be a year before that thing goes off. I would think every about 3 to 4 months, because that way you're rotating the customers in before they're due for their first service, and getting them in the house and getting them familiarized with the faces in the place.
Okay. Marco, your thoughts? How long should a clinic last? I agree that it'll be great to introduce everybody to service, let them see what's going on, but how often, Marco?
I think Sean has a very good point there. If you go too long, it just becomes more of a, yeah, okay, whatever. But one thing has been shown by COVID is that people crave personal attention, and we all know this. You remember, Ted, when you and I talked way back in May of 19, when we first started about it, you asked me the question, it's like, what do you think is the next greatest big thing? It's time. The one thing that we can't buy, we can never get back. We have to make the time that a customer spends in the dealership count. How do we make it memorable? By doing these service clinic kind of deals. So I like to maybe quarterly. That's to me, that's a good spacing.
Okay. Sean, you oversee 8 big dealerships there in Wisconsin. How would you do it? How often?
I like the quarterly thing, because I do like to tie it to learn your vehicle kind of a thing. Because to everybody's point, listen, there are no sales to service walks anymore. We like to say, again, you said it, Ted. We say we like to do them. Nobody's doing them at all. Okay, even on stores that the showroom's connected to the service drive. So it's probably the first time they're going to see the service department, even know what the service department is. I think if you go beyond the quarter, you've almost lost the luster of them learning their new car. Because listen, there's that ether time, and once they're out of the ether, it's not quite as important anymore.
So, Sean, when I took delivery of a new vehicle not too long ago, they had a genius who went over and that was the title, who went over the different features of the vehicle, and it was very impressive. It wasn't long enough, I thought, in my respect, but even though we did that, like in a certain part of the garage, Sean Kingery, I was not shown where to go, for the first, visit. Where do I pull up to the door? Does the door open on its own? Do I pull inside? I didn't, and I'm in the business, and I was not shown, and so I still even had some questions as to, what the steps would be for the first time when I come in.
Funny you say it wasn't long enough. Ted, only the Highlines generally have geniuses anyway. Think about the domestic brands have nothing. Okay. Mm-hmm. How about the question, how to make an appointment? Let's start there. Let's start with the basics. How do you schedule your first service appointment? If the customer leaves and gets a check engine lights, which by the way does happen, they don't even know what to do after day 1, let alone day 90 or day, to Sean's point, 12 months down the line, they have no clue.
And without a sales to service handoff, if they're calling the salesperson back, which I would probably be prone to do, right? I call the salesperson back if that check engine light went on. No introduction to service. So already, we're off.
Why wouldn't you, Ted? It's the only person that's there, quite frankly. That's the only name you have.
Yeah. Cindy Reynolds, your thoughts. How often and how should it happen?
I think coming back from COVID and having not done them for a while, I would recommend at least quarterly, like everyone else is sharing, and hope that it moves into like a monthly. And just because it's bringing and you're creating that customer value. I mean, we all know that if we create value through the experience or whatever it is that we're providing for them, it just becomes something that is part of their routine. We talked about before about customer retention and their journey. It just needs to be part of that and connected to that is something the dealership is offering as part of their customer retention and building that loyalty. So I would hope they move to monthly. I think I would probably start quarterly to work into that. All
right. Good job, everybody. Thank you. I want to move on to the stations, what they would be. Dan, you kind of opened the conversation on that. So I want to come to you. I'll start the conversation with you and then over to Coralie. Marco, when we put the panel together, identified a couple things for stations, talking about maybe Apple, Android, navigation. But Dan, what would you see? What would be the low-hanging fruit, in terms of what the stations would be? And you don't have to mention any brand names if you don't want to, of course.
No, I think that if you have those three, but then a fourth station would be is just the technology of your particular vehicle. You're depending on the SUV, depending on the car, you know, you have touch on your door to open or lock it, unlock it. You can adjust the raising height of the lift gate.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say a fourth station is just the, you know, getting the vehicle set to you, I guess, and learning how to do that. So I like the Apple because for me, I'm an Apple user, but I tell you what, when my son puts his Android on there, I'm like, oh man, that Android looks so much nicer than the Apple CarPlay. But they function differently. So you need to have that expert. But I would say a fourth one would be just the personalization of your vehicle, I guess would be the way that I would put that. So,
all right, Coralie, what do you think? What would the stations be?
One station that would really help us out is service advisors, and it was mentioned earlier, is when that check engine light comes on, what happens and what should the customer do about it? What does it mean? So having a vehicle that has a current light on and having a technician hook up the scan tool to it, show the customer what the scan tool is, and, you know, explain its value, and then the codes that pop up along with it, and show them that it doesn't say, okay, you need to change this particular part on your vehicle, but show them it gives the technician a direction to go in rather than a magic box with all of the answers.
And Coralie, I live, you know, in a fairly, you know, during the winter in a colder climate. Okay, not as cold as others. All right, but I remember there was a really cold spell that we had during the winter, and my tire light went on. Okay, and I checked it, you know, on the vehicle, and it was actually within range. It showed normal, but that light, Coralie, stayed on as well. So, you know, perhaps other lights like tires might even be, you know, something to talk about as well.
Yep, I've been guilty of that too with my brand new vehicle. Tire light came on just after the winter tires were swapped on, and I tried pushing the buttons and didn't know how to do it. So I went to the dealership. I was like, "Why is this still on? It should have been reset."
Yep.
So,
Sean,
I like that.
Valuable.
Ted, I like that. I like that as a fifth option now. So it's really good. I like that.
I think we may end up with a few more. Sean Kingery, I know you were in a colder climate for a good part of the year there. What are your thoughts on the stations?
You know, one of the most popular stations, and it's a twofold answer because it's changing. One of the most popular is raising a car. Raise one of their cars in the air because they don't have a clue what it looks like underneath their car. And now to Cindy's point with EVs coming out, you can't. There's nothing underneath the car now. It's under the hood. So you have to show them what their car looks like. Because what Sean Butler drives or what Marco drives doesn't matter to me. I drive Hellcats. If they're driving electric cars, it's not the same answer. So that's always one of those popular. You raise their car in the air, they get it. They understand it at that point.
Let me go to the technician, Marco. What do you think? What should the stations be? That's a good point, I think, from Kingery there.
Absolutely. And from my experience, just having customers like what was said, hooking up the scan tool, and people are just completely flabbergasted with the amount of control units that are in a vehicle. They don't understand that the average modern day car has more computing power than the space shuttle ever had. That goes, poof, what? And then when they see the car from down below, hopefully they'll never see that, but they're like, wow, there's a lot of parts here. So it all comes down to, how do we set this up? You know, how many stations are there? What do we want to rotate people to? But that is definitely a good wow factor to have the scan tool. And in Coralie's point, yes, it doesn't just go like, here's what you need to do. No, here is the direction you have to take your next diagnostic steps into. That's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. So once it is explained to them, the next service appointment that they have for a light that came on or a problem that they have, you will find that people are a lot more responsive to, it's like, well, it's going to be a little bit because he's like, oh, I know, I saw my car is really complicated.
Marco, follow-up question. Naples Luxury Imports, I know you do an electronic multi-point inspection. I imagine you also do a video from the technician that a customer would see. Would you incorporate maybe showing the customer how to expect that the technician is going to do a video? And very often when I see that video, the technician's under the car showing me stuff.
Absolutely. Seeing is selling. When people can actually, especially if they don't really know what we're talking about. I mean, I can throw all sorts of parts names and component names at them, and they go like, oh, okay. But if they can actually see in person, almost in person, what is going on, it's like, oh yes, this is my car, and like, wow, okay, here's an issue. Seeing is selling, Ted. So absolutely.
Okay. And Marco, of course, you'd have technicians available for this event. We do not.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have sales present that can sell the overall package and how wonderful the car is. Then you have the service advisors there present to help people guide through that handoff from sales to service, as you say. So they know the why their car does this, but now they get to know the how. So you definitely need the technicians present for that, making an all-round package.
Sean Kingery, I would imagine Ed Roberts might include the mobile service unit as part of that clinic. What do you think?
It's a big part of his business, and it's a big hook. Let's be honest. Nobody wants to go to the deal. You know, they're under the ether when they're in sales. It's a fire when they're in service. Nobody wants to get their car fixed. At the end of the day, I don't care what line you are. If it's Ford, if it's Chrysler, if it's BMW, you're BMW, and it's your fault that it broke. Ed's got a good thing going down there because he can fix it mobily. It's not inconvenient. And Ed has streamlined it. And Ed and I, as you know, talk a lot about it. I've learned a lot from Ed on it, what to do and what not to do.
Okay. Sean Butler, your thoughts? What stations we're opening up now? We're even including the mobile units as well.
Yeah, so you guys are 2 for 2 on stealing my thunder, right? You know, I was going to talk about stations. I was going to talk about having the technicians present. So thanks for that. But so I like to have the different stages of the cars when we did them before. We would have technicians, one in the air, one's kind of over there with the wheels pulled off, and the other one was flat on the ground checking under the hood so you could see the various stages. Nowadays, with the rampant usage of the videos, I mean, customers are already seeing that on their first visit, but what we want them to do is be prepared for it before that first visit. So they know what they're looking at. Oh, that is the under my, we get comments in the chats, like you can text, right? Oh, I've never seen the underside of my car. Well, thank goodness you haven't, ma'am, but this is what it looks like, you know?
All right. A follow-up, Sean Butler. What dealership employees, who would be involved in these clinics? Who
the salespeople by far are, legs above us on how the technology works because they sit out there and play in them when the new cars come in. Service people are actually too busy to do that. We only address it when there's a problem. So, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. So I would have a multitude of salespeople at the technology desk, and then I would have the advisors guiding them around. What happens when a check engine light comes on? Have a technician out there with the car that set an EVAP code. Well, you know what? All of a sudden, you've got to manually make it do the test. On some of these new cars, that can be an hour, just so they understand why it takes 2 hours to even give them an answer, right? I mean, because we got bombed on a survey today. 59. I called a lady. Oh yeah. Well, I was there for 2 hours, and then they gave me a loaner car, and everything was great. Well, then why did you just give us like all straight 2s and 3s all the way down? Well, it's brand new. It has 1,000 miles. It shouldn't break.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't prepared. One of these clinics would have prepared them for the wait, and things happen.
Okay. Sean Kingery, interesting comments. Who would you include? What do you think?
I think everybody's got to be involved, from the general manager down. I wouldn't miss one, and I'm going to tell you why. If something goes wrong, I want to know the face of who to go to. Rather than bashing Sean Butler on a survey, they can make a phone call, and hopefully you can get in front of that survey. And Sean, you just stole my thunder on that one, so thanks back to you. Because I do believe, because general managers don't introduce themselves on every car sale. They don't. No. They don't know who the faces are. They don't know who the service manager is. They don't know who the parts manager is. Quite frankly, listen, Ted, you've done a great job this segment on the 80's return of talking a lot about parts. Quite frankly, a lot of people don't even know what they just think parts are for technicians. They don't even know we sell accessories. You got to have parts there. You got to have parts laid out, by the way. God forbid you give away a set of running boards that you've had sitting on the shelf. There could be your next, that could be your giveaway for the month. It could be your hook. You'll have every Chrysler stores, or whatever. You'll have every truck customer there if you're giving away a set of running boards. I promise you will.
So, Sean, good idea. Perhaps a giveaway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will
Always
tell
got to
you.
have giveaways. You got to have a hook. Every clinic, you got to have a hook.
No, I will tell you, Ted, that I would have myself and the parts manager and possibly the GM cooking. So that way, as they make their way around and through the shop, there's food provided. Nothing brings people together more than food.
I love it. All right. Coralie, your thoughts. Who do we involve at the dealership?
Yeah, like you guys both mentioned, the parts department for sure. It just happened a couple of weeks ago where a customer came in and she was looking for new wheels for her husband's vehicle for his birthday. So the parts department is where customers who, you might have a person in their life who doesn't need anything. However, they're a car enthusiast. They're going to want to go to that parts dealership and get the coffee mugs that are labeled, get the hats, get the t-shirts, get the jackets. Their car's going to need new accessories. I've had somebody buy floor mats before for somebody's Christmas present. So to let them know where to go to get these items is awesome, rather than, have them going to wherever online to try to find them. Let them know that they can come into their parts department and we have all these items in stock for them.
Marco, what dealership employees to involve? And speaking of technicians, Marco, I'd probably want to show off some of those certifications, right? Number
Absolutely.
of years and service and so on.
Yep, absolutely. This is something that I think we mentioned this in the panel, the Tech Ventures panel. Just a recognition of all the technicians with their tenure, all their certifications. But when it comes down to it, if you want to have a real successful clinic, you need everybody present. And unfortunately, now it's been mentioned a few times by Coralie, by Sean, and by Sean, parts department. Without the parts department, we can't fix the cars and we have nothing to sell. So I would like to see parts definitely a lot more involved in this, because a lot of people, don't have an idea about what it actually entails to have parts on stock and how much thought goes into what do we stock, what do we not stock. And it's also a great point to what Sean said. Hey, we got some old parts laying around, so old accessories, let's throw these in. It's fantastic. Great idea. I like it.
I like it a lot. Cindy, your thoughts on who to involve?
I think you involve every level of the dealership, but I also would love to see them somewhat reversing the roles, where that it's your executives and your managers that are the first that intercepts each person that's arriving, and to acclimate them to what's happening, what the options are, and then let your service advisors, technicians be the stars of the show. They really need to be the ones that are being showcased, and really for me, it's creating that credibility and building that trust and confidence. And if your management is showing that, then the customers will sense that and realize that they are allowing their, what we'll call frontline people to really shine here, and to be the ones that are educating and giving the information customers are looking for. So I think it's from top management all the way down to wherever you want to stop that, including in, the administration in the office. We have warranty clerks, we have all different types of people that could participate in this as well. So I'd love to see everyone there.
Dan, your thoughts? Who should be involved?
Yeah, it's ditto. Everybody has the same one. I have a dealership by me that Karen, and happens to be a Karen, that is the scheduler. And when I call and she pulls my number up, she goes, "What are we doing this week?" Or "What do you need this visit?" If you get that person involved in these clinics and you have that face, it's going to be a better experience. And for me, going to this particular dealership that I go to, it's the first person that I want to talk to is Karen, and then get passed off to the service advisor. But everybody's got to have a hand in this. We want to retain the customers. I had a parts experience that I needed to get a very specific part, and I couldn't get from your local parts store. I went to the dealership, and guess what? Who had the part? The dealership did. So you can't forget that they're there as well. So,
Marco, I'm thinking out loud. It's almost behooves us at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and you've been talking about these service clinics for a long time, but it almost behooves us. We're doing these pop-up events now around the country. I'm going to see you as well. to go to one of these service clinics and perhaps, show the audience, what this kind of thing looks like today in 2023 and maybe what some of the best practices are. What do you think?
I think that's a fantastic idea, Ted. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we got to. All right.
Absolutely.
Lightning round. Last question for everybody. 30 seconds only. Do not go more than 30 seconds. I'll start with Coralie. We'll go around the horn. We'll end up. Cindy Reynolds will give you the last word. One recommendation for a technology and service clinic, one best practice that you want to share. It could be something we've already talked about here on the panel, but Coralie, I want to start with you. If everybody would share one, start with Coralie. I'll go to Sean Butler, Sean Kingery, Marco, Dan, and then Cindy will bring it home. So what do you think, Coralie?
I think it's important to make a list of the things that people are answering or being asked and answering multiple times a day. And by bringing these out at the clinics, then it's really going to take a bit of pressure off the advisor that's giving these answers out multiple times a day. If you can inform a large audience of how to go through the drive, then it's going to eliminate lots of confusion and frustration for the employees in the future.
I like it. Thank you, Coralie. Sean Butler, your thoughts?
My thoughts would be that, you want to have the stations, you want to have food, you want to have some prizes, but number one, make it a fun and light atmosphere. Make it fun to come to the dealership.
Yep, I like
That's
it. Sean Kingery, your thoughts?
Simple. Walk them through the process. And everything that everybody said here today is walk them through the process, from scheduling appointment, what happens when the car comes in, the fact that it goes behind the big wall and nobody can see it. Walk them through the process so they understand what's really going on. And to Dan's point, listen, it starts at the BDC. I'm a big advocate of BDC. You know that. Explain to what you're going to need when you call in, a VIN number, a mileage. The big things help, and explain to them why and what you're looking for.
Okay. Marco, what do you think?
Set it up as a well-oiled machine. Set up appointments so we can stagger the people coming in and we know who's coming in. Like I said before, people want personal attention. Know the name of the person that is coming in, not just the advisor or the management staff, but also the technicians. So once they get to the stations with the technician, they can go, "Oh, Mr. So-and-so, do you have any questions about your car? Or may I show you this, Miss So-and-so?" That will definitely stick with them for a long time.
Thank you, Marco. Dan Stockel, one best practice to share with the group.
Yeah, the role of management, it's not an option. It's a requirement.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. Thank you, Dan. Cindy, bring it home.
I'm going to bring it home with, just inviting people, like what your process is to invite people for them to understand and know what's happening and what the message of that is, how often to do it a few, like a week before, a few days before, but do it several times so that they remember, and then make it something that they would miss if you never had another service and technology clinic.
And Cindy, I think we get better as time goes on. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time out, but I think the more we do, the better it's going to get. Great information. I want to thank the panel today on service and technology clinics: Coralie Zoof, Sean Butler, Sir Sean Kingery, Marco Zwanenberg, Dan Stockel, and Cindy Reynolds. So everybody, thank you so much. The Service and Technology Clinics panel here back at the 80s at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.